Australian Information Security Manual. In audiobook format. Please subscribe and like for more content. Part 6. This part of the audiobook will cover the following sections. Guidelines for security documentation. Development and maintenance of security. Documentation. System-specific security documentation guidelines for physical security. Facilities and systems. ICT equipment and media guidelines for personnel security. Cybersecurity awareness training. Access to systems and their resources. Let's begin. Guidelines for security documentation. Development and maintenance of security documentation. Cybersecurity strategy. A cybersecurity strategy sets out an organization's guiding principles, objectives and priorities for cybersecurity, typically over a 3 to 5 year period. In addition, a cybersecurity strategy may also cover an organization's threat environment, cybersecurity initiatives or investments the organization plans to make as part of its cybersecurity program. Without a cybersecurity strategy, an organization risks failing to adequately plan for and manage security and business risks within their organization. Security control, ISM 0039. A cybersecurity strategy is developed and implemented. Approval of security documentation. If security documentation is not reviewed and approved by an appropriate authority, system owners risk failing in their duty to ensure that appropriate security controls have been identified and implemented for systems and their operating environments. In doing so, it is important that a system's security architecture, as outlined within the System Security Plan and supported by the Incident Response Plan and Continuous Monitoring Plan, is approved by the system's authorizing officer prior to the development of the system. Security control, ISM 0047. Organizational level security documentation is approved by the Chief Information Security Officer while system-specific security documentation is approved by the system's authorizing officer. Security control, ISM 1739. A system's security architecture is approved prior to the development of the system. Maintenance of security documentation. Threat environments are dynamic. If security documentation is not kept up to date to reflect the current threat environment, policies, processes and procedures may cease to be effective. In such a situation, resources could be devoted to cybersecurity initiatives or investments that have reduced effectiveness or are no longer relevant. Security control, ISM 0888. Security documentation is reviewed at least annually and includes a current as at, date, or equivalent statement. Communication of security documentation. It is important that once security documentation has been approved, it is published and communicated to all stakeholders. If security documentation is not communicated to stakeholders, they will be unaware of what policies and procedures have been implemented for systems. Security control, ISM 1602. Security documentation, including notification of subsequent changes, is communicated to all stakeholders. System-specific security documentation. System-specific security documentation, such as a system security plan, incident response plan, continuous monitoring plan, security assessment report, and plan of action and milestones, supports the accurate and consistent application of policies, processes and procedures for systems. As such, it is important that they are developed by personnel with a good understanding of business requirements, technologies being used in cybersecurity matters. System-specific security documentation may be presented in a number of formats, including in wikis or other forms of document repositories. Furthermore, depending on the documentation framework used, details common to multiple systems could be consolidated into higher-level security documentation. System Security Plan. The System Security Plan provides a description of a system and includes an annex that describes the security controls that have been identified for the system. There can be many stakeholders involved in developing and maintaining a system security plan. This can include representatives from cybersecurity teams, project teams who deliver the capability, including contractors, support teams who operate and support the capability, data owners for data processed, stored or communicated by the system, users for whom the capability is being developed. Security control, ISM 0041. Systems have a system security plan that includes a description of the system and an annex that covers both applicable security controls from this document and any additional security controls that have been identified. Incident Response Plan. Having an incident response plan ensures that when a cybersecurity incident occurs, a plan is in place to respond appropriately to the situation. In most situations, the aim of the response will be to prevent the cybersecurity incident from escalating, restore any impacted system or data, and preserve any evidence. Security control, ISM 0043. Systems have an incident response plan that covers the following. Guidelines on what constitutes a cybersecurity incident. The types of cybersecurity incidents likely to be encountered and the expected response to each type. How to report cybersecurity incidents, internally to an organization and externally to relevant authorities. Other parties which need to be informed in the event of a cybersecurity incident. The authority, or authorities, responsible for investigating and responding to cybersecurity incidents. The criteria by which an investigation of a cybersecurity incident would be requested from a law enforcement agency, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre or other relevant authority. The steps necessary to ensure the integrity of evidence relating to a cybersecurity incident. System contingency measures or a reference to such details if they are located in a separate document. Continuous monitoring plan. A continuous monitoring plan can assist an organization in proactively identifying, prioritizing and responding to security vulnerabilities. Measures to monitor and manage security vulnerabilities in systems can also provide an organization with a wealth of valuable information about their exposure to cyber threats, as well as assisting them to determine security risks associated with the operation of their systems. Undertaking continuous monitoring activities is important as cyber threats and the effectiveness of security controls will change over time. 3 types of continuous monitoring activities are vulnerability assessments, vulnerability scans and penetration tests. A vulnerability assessment typically consists of a review of a system's architecture or an in-depth hands-on assessment, while a vulnerability scan involves using software tools to conduct automated checks for known security vulnerabilities. In each case, the goal is to identify as many security vulnerabilities as possible. A penetration test, however, is designed to exercise real-world scenarios in an attempt to achieve a specific goal, such as compromising critical system components or data. Regardless of the continuous monitoring activities chosen, they should be conducted by suitably skilled personnel independent of the system being assessed. Such personnel can be internal to an organization or from a third party. This ensures that there is no conflict of interest, perceived or otherwise, and that the activities are undertaken in an objective manner. Security control, ISM 1163. Systems have a continuous monitoring plan that includes conducting vulnerability scans for systems at least monthly. Conducting vulnerability assessments or penetration tests for systems at least annually. Analyzing identified security vulnerabilities to determine their potential impact. Using a risk-based approach to prioritize the implementation of mitigations based on effectiveness and cost. Security assessment report. At the conclusion of a security assessment for a system, a security assessment report should be produced by the assessor. This will assist the system owner in performing any initial remediation actions as well as guiding the development of the system's plan of action and milestones. Security control, ISM 1563. At the conclusion of a security assessment for a system, a security assessment report is produced by the assessor and covers the scope of the security assessment, the system's strengths and weaknesses, security risks associated with the operation of the system, the effectiveness of the implementation of security controls, any recommended remediation actions, plan of action and milestones. At the conclusion of a security assessment for a system, and after the production of a security assessment report by the assessor, a plan of action and milestones should be produced by the system owner. This will assist with tracking any of the system's identified weaknesses and recommended remediation actions identified during the security assessment. Security control, ISM 1564. At the conclusion of a security assessment for a system, a plan of action and milestones is produced by the system owner. Guidelines for physical security. Facilities and systems. Physical access to systems. The application of the defense in-depth principle to the protection of systems is enhanced through the use of successive layers of physical security. The first layer of physical security being the use of a security zone for facilities containing systems. Deployable platforms should also meet physical security requirements. Notably, physical security certification authorities dealing with deployable platforms may have specific requirements that supersede the security controls in these guidelines. This may include perimeter controls, building standards and manning levels. As such, an organization implementing deployable platforms should contact their physical security certification authority to seek additional guidance. Security control, ISM 0810. Systems are secured in facilities that meet the requirements for a security zone suitable for their sensitivity or classification. Physical access to servers, network devices and cryptographic equipment. The second layer of physical security is the use of an additional security zone for a server room or communications room. This is then further supplemented by the use of security containers or secure rooms for the protection of servers, network devices and cryptographic equipment. Security Control, ISM 1053. Servers, network devices and cryptographic equipment are secured in server rooms or communications rooms that meet the requirements for a security zone suitable for their sensitivity or classification. Security Control, ISM 1530. Servers, network devices and cryptographic equipment are secured in security containers or secure rooms suitable for their sensitivity or classification, taking into account the combination of security zones they reside in. Security Control, ISM 0813. Server rooms, communications rooms, security containers and secure rooms are not left in unsecured states. Security Control, ISM 1074. Keys or equivalent access mechanisms to server rooms, communications rooms, security containers and secure rooms are appropriately controlled. Physical access to network devices in public areas. Unprotected network devices in public areas could lead to accidental or deliberate physical damage resulting in an interruption of services. Alternatively, unauthorized access to network devices may allow an adversary to reset them to factory default settings, thereby removing any security controls, or connect directly to them in order to bypass network access controls. Even if access to network devices is not gained by resetting them to factory default settings, it is highly likely that it will cause an interruption of services. Physical access to network devices can be restricted through physical security controls, such as using enclosures that prevent access to their console ports and factory reset buttons, mounting them on ceilings or behind walls, or securing them in security containers. Security Control, ISM 1296. Physical security controls are implemented to protect network devices in public areas from physical damage or unauthorized access. Bringing radio frequency and infrared devices into facilities. Radio frequency, RF, devices, such as mobile devices, wireless keyboards and Bluetooth devices, as well as infrared, IR, devices, can pose a security risk to an organization, especially when they are capable of recording or transmitting audio or data. In secret and top secret areas, it is important that an organization understands the security risks associated with the introduction of RF and IR devices and maintain a register of those that have been authorized for use in such environments. In deciding which RF or IR devices to authorize to be brought into secret and top secret areas, an organization should consider any mitigating measures already in place, such as whether IR communications would be prevented from traveling outside secured spaces, whether systems of different sensitives or classifications are used in the same spaces, and if any temporary or permanent method of blocking RF or IR transmissions has been applied to the facility. Security Control, ISM 1543. An authorized RF and IR device register is maintained for secret and top secret areas and verified on a regular basis. Security Control, ISM 0225. Unauthorized RF and IR devices are not brought into secret and top secret areas. Security Control, ISM 0829. Security measures are used to detect and respond to unauthorized RF devices in secret and top secret areas. Preventing observation by unauthorized people. Without sufficient perimeter security, the inside of a facility is often observable by unauthorized people, such as via direct observation or by using equipment with a telephoto lens. Ensuring systems, in particular workstation displays and keyboards, are not visible through windows, such as via the use of blinds, curtains, privacy films or workstation positioning, will assist in reducing this security risk. Security Control, ISM 0164. Unauthorized people are prevented from observing systems, in particular workstation displays and keyboards, within facilities. ICT equipment and media. Securing ICT equipment and media. ICT equipment and media needs to be secured when not in use. This can be achieved by implementing one of the following approaches. Securing ICT equipment and media in an appropriate security container or secure room. Using ICT equipment without hard drives and sanitizing memory at shutdown. Encrypting hard drives of ICT equipment and sanitizing memory at shutdown. Sanitizing memory of ICT equipment at shutdown and removing and securing any hard drives. If none of the above approaches are feasible, an organization may wish to minimize the potential impact of not securing ICT equipment when not in use. This can be achieved by preventing sensitive or classified data from being stored on hard drives, storing user profiles and documents on network shares, removing temporary user data at logoff, scrubbing virtual memory at shutdown, and sanitizing memory at shutdown. It should be noted though that there is no guarantee that such measures will always work effectively or will not be bypassed due to unexpected circumstances, such as the loss of power. Therefore, hard drives in such cases will retain their sensitivity or classification for the purposes of reuse, reclassification, declassification, sanitization, destruction and disposal. Security control, ISM 0161. ICT equipment and media are secured when not in use. Guidelines for personnel security. Cybersecurity awareness training. Providing cybersecurity awareness training. An organization should ensure that cybersecurity awareness training is provided to all personnel in order to assist them in understanding their security responsibilities. Furthermore, the content of cybersecurity awareness training should be tailored to the needs of specific groups of personnel. For example, personnel with responsibilities beyond that of a normal user will require tailored privileged user training. Security control, ISM 0252. Cybersecurity awareness training is undertaken annually by all personnel and covers the purpose of the cybersecurity awareness training. Security appointments and contacts. Authorized use of systems and their resources. Protection of systems and their resources. Reporting of cybersecurity incidents and suspected compromises of systems and their resources. Security control, ISM 1565. Tailored privileged user training is undertaken annually by all privileged users. Managing and reporting suspicious changes to banking details or payment requests. Business email compromise, a form of financial fraud, is when an adversary attempts to scam an organization out of money or assets with the assistance of a compromised email account. An adversary will typically attempt to achieve this via invoice fraud, employee impersonation or company impersonation. With invoice fraud, an adversary will compromise a vendor's email account and through it have access to legitimate invoices. The adversary will then edit contact and bank details on invoices and send them to customers with the compromised email account. Customers will then pay the invoices, thinking that they are paying the vendor, but instead be sending money to the adversary's bank account. With employee impersonation, an adversary will compromise an organization's email account and impersonate an employee via email. This is then used to commit financial fraud in a number of ways. One common method is to impersonate a person in a position of authority, such as a chief executive officer or chief financial officer, and have a false invoice raised. Another method is to request a change to an employee's banking details. The funds from the false invoice or the employee's salary is then sent to the adversary's bank account. With company impersonation, an adversary registers a domain with a name similar to another organization. The adversary then impersonates that organization in an email to a vendor and requests a quote for a quantity of expensive assets, such as laptops, and subsequently negotiates for the assets to be delivered to them prior to payment. The assets are then delivered to a location specified by the adversary, with the invoice being sent to the legitimate organization who never ordered or received the assets. To mitigate business email compromise, personnel should be educated to look for the following warning signs. An unexpected request for a change of banking details. An urgent payment request, or threats of serious consequences if payment is not made. Unexpected payment requests from a person in a position of authority, particularly if payment requests are unusual from this person. An email received from a suspicious email address, such as an email address not matching an organization's name. In dealing with such situations, personnel should have clear guidance to verify bank account details, think critically before actioning unusual payment requests, and have a process to report threatening demands for immediate action, pressure for secrecy, or requests to circumvent normal business processes and procedures. Security control, ISM 1740. Personnel dealing with banking details and payment requests are advised of what business email compromise is, how to manage such situations and how to report it. Reporting suspicious contact via online services. Online services, such as email, internet forums, messaging apps and direct messaging on social media, can be used by an adversary in an attempt to elicit sensitive or classified information from personnel. As such, personnel should be advised of what suspicious contact via online services is and how to report it. Security control, ISM 0817. Personnel are advised of what suspicious contact via online services is and how to report it. Posting work information to online services. Personnel should be advised to take special care not to post work information to online services unless authorized to do so, especially in internet forums and on social media. Even information that appears to be benign in isolation could, along with other information, have a considerable security impact. In addition, To ensure that personal opinions of individuals are not misinterpreted, personnel should be advised to maintain separate work and personal accounts for online services, especially when using social media. Security Control, ISM 0820. Personnel are advised to not post work information to unauthorized online services and to report cases where such information is posted. Security Control, ISM 1146. Personnel are advised to maintain separate work and personal accounts for online services. Posting personal information to online services. Personnel should be advised that any personal information they post to online services, such as social media, could be used by an adversary to develop a detailed understanding of their lifestyle and interests. In turn, this information could be used to build trust in order to elicit sensitive or classified information from them, or influence them to undertake specific actions, such as opening malicious email attachments or visiting malicious websites. Furthermore, posting information on movements and activities may allow an adversary to time attempted financial fraud to align with when a person in a position of authority will be uncontactable, such as attending meetings or traveling. Finally, encouraging personnel to use any available privacy settings for online services can reduce security risks by restricting who can view their information as well as their interactions with such services. Security Control, ISM 0821. Personnel are advised of security risks associated with posting personal information to online services and are encouraged to use any available privacy settings to restrict who can view such information. Sending and receiving files via online services. When personnel send and receive files via unauthorized online services, such as messaging apps and social media, they often bypass security controls put in place to detect and quarantine malicious code. Advising personnel to send and receive files via authorized online services instead will ensure files are appropriately protected and scanned for malicious code. Security Control, ISM 0824. Personnel are advised not to send or receive files via unauthorized online services. Access to systems and their resources. Security clearances. Where these guidelines refer to security clearances, it applies to Australian security clearances or security clearances from a foreign government which are formally recognized by Australia. System access requirements. Documenting access requirements for a system and its resources can assist in determining if personnel have the appropriate authorization, security clearance, briefings and need to know to access the system and its resources. Types of users for which access requirements should be documented include unprivileged users, privileged users, foreign nationals and contractors. Security Control, ISM 0432. Access requirements for a system and its resources are documented in its System Security Plan. Security Control, ISM 0434. Personnel undergo appropriate employment screening and, where necessary, hold an appropriate security clearance before being granted access to a system and its resources. Security Control, ISM 0435. Personnel receive any necessary briefings before being granted access to a system and its resources. User identification. Having uniquely identifiable users ensures accountability for access to a system and its resources. Furthermore, where a system processes, stores or communicates Australian Eyes Only, AUSTIO, Australian Government Access Only, AGAO, or releasable to, REL, data, and foreign nationals have access to the system, it is important that the foreign nationals are identified as such. Security Control, ISM 0414. Personnel granted access to a system and its resources are uniquely identifiable. Security Control, ISM 0415. The use of shared user accounts is strictly controlled, and personnel using such accounts are uniquely identifiable. Security Control, ISM 1583. Personnel who are contractors are identified as such. Security Control, ISM 0420. Where a system processes, stores or communicates AUSTIO, AGAO or REL data, personnel who are foreign nationals are identified as such, including by their specific nationality. Unprivileged access to systems. Personnel seeking access to systems, applications and data repositories should have a genuine business requirement validated by their manager or another appropriate authority. Finally, to assist with incident response activities, it is important that unprivileged access event logs are centrally stored and protected from unauthorized modification and deletion, monitored for signs of compromise, and actioned when cybersecurity events are detected. Security Control, ISM 0405. Requests for unprivileged access to systems, applications and data repositories are validated when first requested. Security Control, ISM 1566. Use of unprivileged access is logged. Security Control, ISM 1714. Unprivileged access event logs are centrally stored and protected from unauthorized modification and deletion, monitored for signs of compromise, and actioned when cybersecurity events are detected. Unprivileged access to systems by foreign nationals. Due to the extra sensitivities associated with OSTIO, AGAO and REL data, foreign access to such data is strictly controlled. Security Control, ISM 0409. Foreign nationals, including seconded foreign nationals, do not have access to systems that process, store or communicate OSTIO or REL data unless effective security controls are in place to ensure such data is not accessible to them. Security Control, ISM 0411. Foreign nationals, excluding seconded foreign nationals, do not have access to systems that process, store or communicate AGAO data unless effective security controls are in place to ensure such data is not accessible to them. Privileged access to systems. Privileged accounts are considered to be those which can alter or circumvent a system's security controls. This can also apply to users who have only limited privileges, such as software developers, but can still bypass security controls. A privileged account often has the ability to modify system configurations, account privileges, event logs and security configurations for applications. Privileged users, and in some cases privileged service accounts, are often targeted by an adversary as they can potentially give full access to systems. As such, ensuring that privileged accounts do not have the ability to access the internet, email and web services minimizes opportunities for these accounts to be compromised. Finally, to assist with incident response activities, it is important that privileged access event logs and privileged account and group change event logs are centrally stored and protected from unauthorized modification and deletion, monitored for signs of compromise, and actioned when cybersecurity events are detected. Security Control, ISM 1507. Requests for privileged access to systems and applications are validated when first requested. Security Control, ISM 1733. Requests for privileged access to data repositories are validated when first requested. Security Control, ISM 1508. Privileged access to systems and applications is limited to only what is required for users and services to undertake their duties. Security Control, ISM 1175. Privileged user accounts are prevented from accessing the internet, email and web services. Security Control, ISM 1653. Privileged service accounts are prevented from accessing the internet, email and web services. Security Control, ISM 1649. Just-in-time administration is used for administering systems and applications. Security Control, ISM 0445. Privileged users are assigned a dedicated privileged account to be used solely for tasks requiring privileged access. Security Control, ISM 1509. Use of privileged access is logged. Security Control, ISM 1650. Changes to privileged accounts and groups are logged. Security Control, ISM 1651. Privileged access event logs are centrally stored and protected from unauthorized modification and deletion, monitored for signs of compromise, and actioned when cybersecurity events are detected. Security Control, ISM 1652. Privileged account and group change event logs are centrally stored and protected from unauthorized modification and deletion, monitored for signs of compromise, and actioned when cybersecurity events are detected. Privileged access to systems by foreign nationals. As privileged accounts often have the ability to bypass a system's security controls, it is strongly encouraged that foreign nationals are not given privileged access to systems that process, store or communicate OSTIO, AGAO or REL data. Security Control, ISM 0446. Foreign nationals, including seconded foreign nationals, do not have privileged access to systems that process, store or communicate OSTIO or REL data. Security Control, ISM 0447. Foreign nationals, excluding seconded foreign nationals, do not have privileged access to systems that process, store or communicate AGAO data. Suspension of access to systems. Removing or suspending access to systems, applications and data repositories can prevent them from being accessed when there is no longer a legitimate business requirement for their use, such as when personnel change duties, leave an organization or are detected undertaking malicious activities. Security Control, ISM 0430. Access to systems, applications and data repositories is removed or suspended on the same day personnel no longer have a legitimate requirement for access. Security Control, ISM 1591. Access to systems, applications and data repositories is removed or suspended as soon as practicable when personnel are detected undertaking malicious activities. Security Control, ISM 1404. Unprivileged access to systems and applications is automatically disabled after 45 days of inactivity. Security Control, ISM 1648. Privileged access to systems and applications is automatically disabled after 45 days of inactivity. Security Control, ISM 1716. Access to data repositories is automatically disabled after 45 days of inactivity. Security Control, ISM 1647. Privileged access to systems and applications is automatically disabled after 12 months unless revalidated. Security Control, ISM 1734. Privileged access to data repositories is automatically disabled after 12 months unless revalidated. Recording authorization for personnel to access systems. Retaining records of system account requests will assist in maintaining personnel accountability. This is needed to ensure there is a record of all personnel authorized to access a system, their user identification, who provided the authorization, when the authorization was granted and when the access was last reviewed. Security Control, ISM 0407. A secure record is maintained for the life of each system covering all personnel authorized to access the system, and their user identification. Who provided authorization for access? When access was granted. The level of access that was granted. When access, and the level of access, was last reviewed. When the level of access was changed, and to what extent, if applicable. When access was withdrawn, if applicable. Temporary access to systems. Under strict circumstances, temporary access to systems, applications or data repositories may be granted to personnel who lack an appropriate security clearance or briefing. In such circumstances, personnel should have their access controlled in such a way that they only have access to data required for them to undertake their duties. Security Control, ISM 0441. When personnel are granted temporary access to a system, effective security controls are put in place to restrict their access to only data required for them to undertake their duties. Security Control, ISM 0443. Temporary access is not granted to systems that process, store or communicate caveated or sensitive compartmented information. Emergency access to systems. It is important that an organization does not lose access to their systems. As such, an organization should always have a method for gaining access during emergencies. Typically, emergencies would occur when access to systems cannot be gained via normal authentication processes, such as due to misconfigurations of authentication services, misconfigurations of security settings, or due to a cybersecurity incident. In these situations, a break glass account, also known as an emergency access account, can be used to gain access. As break glass accounts generally have the highest level of privileges available for systems, extreme care should be taken to both protect them and to monitor for any signs of compromise or abuse. When break glass accounts are used, any administrative activities performed will not be directly attributable to an individual, and systems may not generate event logs. As such, additional security controls need to be implemented in order to maintain the system's integrity. In doing so, an organization should ensure that any administrative activities performed using a break glass account are identified and documented in support of change management processes and procedures. This includes documenting the individual using the break glass account, the reason for using the break glass account, and any administrative activities performed using the break glass account. As the custodian of each break glass account should be the only party who knows the account's credentials, credentials will need to be changed and tested by custodians after any authorized access by another party. Modern password managers that support automated credential changes and testing can assist in reducing the administrative overhead of such activities. Finally, to assist with incident response activities, it is important that break glass event logs are centrally stored and protected from unauthorized modification and deletion, monitored for signs of compromise, and actioned when cybersecurity events are detected. Security Control, ISM 1610. A method of emergency access to systems is documented and tested at least once when initially implemented and each time fundamental information technology infrastructure changes occur. Security Control, ISM 1611. Break glass accounts are only used when normal authentication processes cannot be used. Security Control, ISM 1612. Break glass accounts are only used for specific authorized activities. Security Control, ISM 1614. Break glass account credentials are changed by the account custodian after they are accessed by any other party. Security Control, ISM 1615. Break glass accounts are tested after credentials are changed. Security Control, ISM 1613. Use of break glass accounts is logged. Security Control, ISM 1715. Break glass event logs are centrally stored and protected from unauthorized modification and deletion, monitored for signs of compromise, and actioned when cybersecurity events are detected. Control of Australian systems. Due to extra sensitivities associated with Osteo and AGAO data, it is essential that control of systems that process, store or communicate such data are maintained by Australian nationals working for or on behalf of the Australian government. Furthermore, Osteo and AGAO data should only be accessible from systems under the sole control of the Australian government that are located within facilities authorised by the Australian government. Security Control, ISM 0078. Systems processing, storing or communicating Osteo or AGAO data remain at all times under the control of an Australian national working for or on behalf of the Australian government. Security Control, ISM 0854. Osteo and AGAO data can only be accessed from systems under the sole control of the Australian government that are located within facilities authorised by the Australian government. This is the end of Part 6. Please subscribe and like for more content. More parts will continue.